We're going to go right into it, and we're going to introduce ourselves rather than have this long bio speech, so that we can spend more time on the actual topics. I think you heard this. You can get credit for this class. I'm not sure how, but there's something about it that you could look in your literature here. It'll tell you how to do it. Okay, that's us. I'm the one on the right. He's the one on the left. I'm Fernando. He's Jay. And we're going to be your presenters. Now, why me? A little bit of self-credentialing. I've spent all of my life, since my 20s, working on affordable housing. I spent my early part of life working on affordable housing because I was poor, and that's what I did. Later on, I actually made a decision to it, and it came about 1992 when there was a Great Recession. I was working in Los Angeles at the time, and I built affordable housing. However, during this Great Recession, all the guys I envied, the ones that were doing like these multi-million-dollar homes in Santa Monica and such, they all went broke. I remember when American Beauty Homes went broke, they were building big developments and all. I didn't go broke. I didn't have a great year, but I built these humble little houses in a Hispanic neighborhood, and I just kind of chugged through. And then I realized maybe I was onto something, and I stuck to it. A few times in my life, I've gone astray. I've decided I needed the money, and I tried to do something for money, because, people on the high end do make money. I never could. For some reason, I was a complete failure on the high end, but have been very good on the low end. And I've focused my energies and my research on that low end, that entry-level home. We used to call it entry-level home. I should tell you that much of what you'll get out of this session does not only apply to entry-level homes or affordable homes. A lot of it you can apply to very expensive houses, just to make them less expensive. I found that affordability, there's all levels of affordability. The guy who's going to buy a $4 million house really wishes it was $3.5 million rather than 4, right? So affordability applies at every level, but you will hear me speak to affordable housing and really speak to the low end. So forgive me, that's what I know. You can apply it in your own way. I've written and contributed to a total of now 6 books, because there's one in the works, on affordable housing. So I've also not only been doing it for about 40 years, but I've actually researched it. I've researched what other people do too. How do they accomplish it? So that's what kind of informs my approach. And I've also been friends with this guy for a long time, whom you hear. He informs a lot of my approach, and you'll see in a few minutes. So my new book, Building an Affordable House, I understand is in the bookstore here. Now, what's the opportunity? The opportunity is quite large right now because we're in an affordable housing crisis, right? It's all the rage. I was just at the hippie conference, the Yes in My Backyard people. These are pro-housing hippies. And they've done a lot. They have managed to change regulations all throughout the United States, such that you can do things now that you couldn't do before. And one thing I hope you get out of this session is that you can do things now that you don't think you can do, because of the way we've been thinking about housing for a really, really long time. The Urban League, they're a big organization like NAHB that deals with commercial housing, apartment complexes, affordable housing on a whole different scale. But one of the things they emphasize is the need to find new approaches to construction, new technologies. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, who is taking advantage of this? Who is taking advantage of this by way of kind of credentialing the topic now? Does anybody recognize those 2 little houses? This is a major builder. Somebody's got their hand up. Who did it? Lennar. Very good. Thank you. Do you use vinyl siding?
No.
No. Okay, then you get this book. My beautiful assistant will hand you a book. Here you go.
I don't know what it is.
Right there in the back.
Oh, okay. All right.
This hand up. Very good. These are Lennar homes. They're selling for about $330,000. Now look at them closely. The lots are 35 foot wide, narrow lots. You can do this now in cities throughout the United States. The zoning permits it. Houston, where I live, 1,400 square foot. That's the minimum lot size. There are cities without a minimum lot size. It could be a 200 square foot lot. If you can figure out how to do all the setbacks and put a house on it, You're good. The house is very narrow, you'll notice. It's very simple. Has a 4 and 12 roof line. It has just like 2 windows in the front. What is missing? What is missing? Very clearly missing that we think we need to have. Thank you. Do you use vinyl siding?
No.
You don't. Here you go. That works for you. I'm not, by the way, if you say you do use vinyl siding, you get the better book. Just. So Lennar, a big builder, has recognized that you can do a lot now if you get the right price point on a house. You don't have to have a garage. You'll find out you don't have to have a dishwasher. There's a lot of things that people will forego in order to own a home. We used to think that you needed to have a 2-car garage. Nobody would buy a house now. That, you have to have a dishwasher, you have to have this and that. And that's what's called features creep. We've added so many things to the minimum requirements of the building code that we ourselves have engendered the problem by creating a different level of expectation. What was the basic house in the 1950s? How many square feet was that basic house? Approximately.
1,000.
Everybody, what? Somebody,
1,000.
about 1,000. You already got one. They got over there. Do you use vinyl siding? Yes or no?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm the wife, but no, we don't. Certified don't mean that's on the panel.
Here you go. My beautiful assistant will hand you a book. So there you go. 900 square feet, 30 by 30. That was the basic footprint. And notice 30 by 30, the basic footprint. So when you approach affordable housing, one of the things you want to do is actually make it affordable. So you want to avoid cheap washing. You've heard of greenwashing, I call it cheap washing. Cheap washing is what? Cheap washing is what planners do. I know there's a couple, there's one planner in the audience. He's a dear friend, I hope not to offend him. But planners do cheap washing. What do? They say, okay, this very unaffordable unit that costs $450,000 is within 5 minutes walking distance of a bus stop, transit. So you don't have to own a car. Car costs at least $10,000 a year to own, right? Over a 30-year mortgage, that's $300,000. This $450,000 unit is actually $150,000 when you take into account that it's 5 minutes from transit. And you're going to be so healthy walking back and forth every day in the rain that it's going to save you a lot of medical bills too. So this house is practically free. That's what I call cheap washing, because nobody can afford the darn house to begin with to realize all these benefits, right? So all of that has to go by the wayside. You know, this house is so healthy that you'll never get sick. So that's why its $600,000 price tag really doesn't reflect the real cost. This house is so energy efficient that over the next 30 years, you're going to pay back this fantastic geothermal heat pump 7 times. But you're going to buy it on the first year, right? You need the basic price to be low. So avoid cheap washing and make it a goal to build affordably. It has to be your primary goal if that's what you're aiming to do. If that's not what you're aiming to do, it doesn't need to. If you want to build the greenest house in the world, that's fantastic. Make that your goal. But if you want to build affordably, you have to be focused on that, okay? So you have to understand that you're not going to be able to do everything. It's not going to be able to be affordable, incredibly energy efficient, unbelievably environmentally benign, incredibly beautiful, fantastically luxurious, all of that. That's a child's dream. That's not reality. You cannot meet all goals at once, so you have to list your values in order of priority. Because certainly you are going to have more than one goal. I could show you pictures of some extremely affordable housing that nobody in this room would build, right? It just wouldn't align with trying to do what? To sell, right? So I'll tell you what my goals are. My first goal is affordability. I aim for the lowest cost. I design for the lowest cost. I do not stop working on a set of plans until I know that there is nothing I can do. There isn't a nail I can extract from this to make the cost lower. That's my first step. My second step is I've got to make it pretty, right? Because human beings are complicated animals. We're not like chickens. We don't just need a dry stick and a warm place to stay away from the fox at night. We have like all kinds of emotional needs and stuff. We needed to have curb appeal. We needed to impress our friends and all. So you have to make it pretty enough. It has to be somewhat appealing. So once I get all the way down to, I've whittled out the last cent, I go back and I start trying to see now, what can I do? How can I put wisdom out of this pit? So I try to make it marketable. That's my second, not my first, that's my second criteria. And my third criteria is durability. Durability, quality control. When you're building very affordably, you're doing a lot of things which I call material sparing techniques, where you're like using less concrete, less wood, less of everything, or you're using thinner drywall, or it really is cheapening out in a sense. But when you do that, and you can by code, I'll verify this in a minute, you have to be very careful. You have to do a very good job as a builder. You've got to have your eyes on the job. Quality control becomes very important. Why is durability important? Which I think the cheapest way to do something durable is to use, good craft, to build it well, to use good quality control. It's got to be durable because the warranty calls can eat your lunch. So I don't build durable because I believe in durability and I want homes that will last for centuries, or I believe my buyers deserve a house they can pass on to the next generation. I do it so my phone won't ring, right? I do not want warranty calls. It's part of my affordability scheme. So every year I create a budget in January that has all the line items that I normally use in construction, from concrete all the way up to paint. And then it's got no dollars in that budget. It's only a place to deposit costs. When I get a warranty call, everything related to the cause of that warranty call goes under that line item. So one year I got a call, and I got the call several times that year, that there were window leaks. And the window leaks caused damage to the drywall, they caused damage to the flooring, they caused damage to the trim. I had to do all this work. All of those costs, the flooring costs didn't go under flooring, they went under windows. The drywall costs went under windows. Everything related to the window problem went under windows. And I do the same thing with plumbing, the same thing with roofing, whatever it is. Sort of towards the middle end of the year, I start looking at that thing. My God, my window line item is really blowing out. I realized I've got to get better windows. Right? I had those windows that if you install them absolutely perfectly, you have a warranty, but there's always a little problem because you have framers installing the windows rather than Swedish automobile mechanics. And I had to get better windows, right? I couldn't deal with it. So I had to actually spend more to spend less cumulatively. So durability is important for that reason. So how to achieve affordability? First of all, you have to design for affordability. You have to design for it. You cannot hope the plan comes out inexpensive just because you wish it to be so, or because you're going to really lean on your subs. In fact, that's a terrible approach because subs hate affordable home builders. They really do. They don't make any money with us. So if on top of a real problem, we're leaning on them to reduce their prices further, then it's the wrong approach. So you got to design it so you know that house is going to be inexpensive to build before you even start speccing it. You got to design for affordability. And I'm going to speak to that mainly. You have to collaborate for affordability. Why? Because a lot of people are involved in the construction of a house. You've got subcontractors, material men, maybe engineers, inspectors. So you've got to collaborate with all these people to get them on your team. Subs don't like you building affordably. Why? Because they would rather you build super unaffordably. They make more money, they make their profits. So you have to convince them, and some will. Some really even are somewhat idealistic and love the idea of building homes for the next generation, or starter homes. Some just simply because you provided them a very efficient, easy in and out job that they can use to, one day in and out rough in, you can always fill in a day when you don't have enough work. Send them over to Fernando's house, right? It's easy, we've done it 1,000 times, let's do it one more time. So there's a lot of ways to convince people to work with you, but you're gonna need that collaboration. And then today, I wrote the first version of building an affordable house in 2005, and I didn't focus a lot on land strategies because I could go out and buy a $15,000 lot. I tell people, just go buy the cheapest lot in town, it doesn't matter if it's next to the railroad tracks. If your price is low enough, people will buy next to the railroad tracks. I know this for a fact. I've done it, whole subdivisions on the railroad tracks practically. It works. But nowadays, man, land is so expensive that the cheapest lot in town is way too expensive to build an affordable house. You need some new land strategies. And then you need hard dollar construction approaches to affordability, optimizing your foundations, your framing, your plumbing, everything else. And that's what Jay will talk about in depth. So I'm going to go into design. The first thing I don't do is I don't start with a floor plan. I never start thinking in terms of, oh, I want the kitchen to be like this, or, the living room really should look out on this vista. The bathroom should. If you start with a floor plan, your house balloons into unaffordability. I always say dream houses start at like $1 million. If you really design everything you want, you got this match. You cannot start with a floor plan or dreaming about how this is going to lay out. You must start with a footprint. Footprint. I have this weird tiny lot in the unfortunate part of town. What can I fit on this thing? With all the setbacks, it's on a corner, it's got two. And you begin to see, okay, this is the footprint I have. Maybe your area requires a minimum square footage of house. Now that's changing, but a lot of needs to do. It's got to be at least 1,600 square feet. That's the minimum size. Okay, now you got that. Now, how can I create the most efficient footprint? The first thing I discovered about this a long time ago, and I don't remember how I discovered it, but I didn't mean I discovered it because I read it somewhere or somebody told me, was that squares were the next most efficient shape to circles. Why? Because the square has the least amount of perimeter to area. The perimeter to area ratio is best in the square to any shape. So I began to experiment with that, and I drew up this little thing. And it's a little deceiving because it's got walls on it. It really should just be a square and a rectangle. If you look on your left-hand side, the square has 625 square feet, which is made up of 4 sides of 25 feet. Do you add 4 times 25? Anybody? Nobody?
100.
100. Who said 100?
100.
100. Okay. You use vinyl siding? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. Here you go. You get the good book. So, it has 100 square feet. Now, the figure next to it, this odd house, is 12 and a half feet deep. Weird house, 50 feet long. It also encloses 625 feet of area. But when you add up all the sides, it turns out to be 125 lineal feet of exterior perimeter. That's 25% more, right? 25% more of what? Insulation, foam, continuous insulation, siding, sheathing, all kinds of stuff that make exterior walls more expensive than interior walls. So you see, the very first lines you drew on paper, one is 25% more expensive to build, at least in this one parameter. Now, it doesn't flow through perfectly when you actually get to doing a house, because in the house you have another consideration, which is you actually have the rectangles and squares that are the exterior walls. So, after I get my footprint, this is my basic footprint, I start playing with what is the ratio between my square feet of floor and my square feet of exterior wall. Not just the perimeter, but how many square feet of floor and square feet of exterior wall. If we run the same equations that I showed you with the perimeter, you discover that in the example, the 625 square foot square yields a ratio of 0.78. That means I divide the square feet of floor by the square feet of wall, and I get 0.78. That means that 0.78 square feet of interior floor space, that for every square foot of interior floor space, I am occupying a little bit less than a square foot of exterior wall, right? 0.78 exterior wall to 1 square feet of interior floor space. That's pretty efficient. What is the most efficient shape? Somebody said a circle, but when you speak about volume, it's a sphere. Right? That's why people were building geodesic domes for a while. But they're impossible to furnish, they look really weird, and they're difficult to build, they're not cheap to build. So these mathematical formulas have a limit. In this case, 0.78 is pretty good. You're trying to get to 1. You're trying to get as close as you can to 1. The rectangle is a little less efficient, it's 0.62. But I discovered messing around, because I created an Excel formula where I could put the linear feet of wall and everything in it and calculate stuff out based on the height. Is a 10-foot wall, 8-foot wall, what it is. I discovered that one of the reasons that this plan I've been working with that was really affordable to build, it was very efficient with this ratio. It was 24 by 34. See, I had a lot of narrow lots. You put this on a 35-foot lot, it's 24 feet wide. And this shape yielded the incredible ratio of 0.88. 0.88. So you can play with this, see how close you can get to 1. It's kind of fun. After I've established what my shell is, my basic shape, and by the way, if you stray from the rectangle and the squares and these basic shapes, you inevitably cost yourself a lot of money. You start putting corners on the house and doing C-shaped and doing L-shaped, more money. Every corner is an expensive proposition. So try and keep your basic shape simple, and if you need to attach a garage to it, make it a square and make it something that's almost modular that you can put on different sides of the house, move it around. But the next thing we got to do after we've out of the drawing board, we start thinking about the interior of the house, is locate your central utility core. This is where all your heavy-duty utilities are going to be. This is where you're going to have your HVAC system, your plumbing, your water heaters, your possibly panel. So I look to put it in the center of the home, okay? I like to put it in the center of the home, and I actually run all my HVAC from that center of the house in a trunk line. I don't run ducts all over the place. I try not to run pipes all over the place. I try not to run heavy wiring for like dishwashers and stoves and things like that all over the place. I try to keep it in a very small and concentrated area. In this particular house that you're looking at, it's a 2-story house. The bathrooms for the upstairs are directly above. Everything gets fed off that trunk line where I have the red arrows. And if you look at the picture of the house, it's a very decent house. It's vinyl siding, incidentally. But I sold it for $90,000. I sold it at cost for $90,000 as a demonstration home. Is there anybody from HUD here? Some guys from HUD. There you are. This was my partner, stand up. Oh, this guy. A lot of gratitude. I worked with the PATH project, PATH Partnership of Advancing Technology and Housing, which Mike headed up, and we did a lot of really cool homes. Among this, and which I think is a real achievement, 90,000 if you look at it. Came out and find home building, Duel, all kinds of magazines. I told you that I use a central trunk line, a plenum, and there it is. This is my simplest little house. Like here is my little trunk line system. I just run one line down the middle, and all the registers, I call them register loops, come right off that trunk line. You've ever been to a restaurant, a cool restaurant? You've been to a cool restaurant, right? I can tell, like me, you like the restaurants. There's how are they air conditioned and heated? There's a giant, cool-looking duct painted some neat color in the middle, and then just the air conditioning spills out the sides of the ducts. That's how I heat and air condition my house. If you've got a good exterior envelope, well-sealed, nice insulation, you don't need to run ducting all over the place so that you get it in every exterior wall. You can do it on an interior wall. And that's my register boot right there on the left-hand side. And there's one of my guys building a little drop ceiling below the trunk line or plenum. We're on the lower level. He's just doing drywall with that thing. It's hidden. And that's it. That's my whole AC system. The next thing that concerns me is the plumbing. I used to say back-to-back plumbing. Everybody knows that, right? How many people in the room have heard of back-to-back? I don't have that many books, by the way. We're just taking a lot of people back-to-back. You've got to put your toilets back-to-back. And you see this little example, they are back-to-back. That'll save you $50. Okay? It is not the be-all and end-all of arranging your plumbing. The main thing you want with your plumbing is to be in the smallest area of the house as possible. And there's a brilliant guy called Gary Klein who came upon what he calls the wet room rectangle. The wet room rectangle. He did this because he was concerned about the wait time for hot water. You wait too long for hot water, you wasted water, you didn't want to waste water. He's one of these guys that doesn't want anybody to waste water. So he began to see if you put the water heater and the fixtures all very close together, then you turn on the faucet and the water comes out quickly. So he devised this wet room rectangle idea. And the basic idea is that you draw a rectangle in your plans that encloses all the wet areas, wherever there's a plumbing, including the water heater, and then you see, by comparing it to the rest of your plan, and this is a very efficient little footprint. In fact, the guy who drew this footprint is here in the room somewhere, architect Andres Guano, working on affordable housing. He came up with this very tight, very nice little arrangement here. The bedrooms and the rooms are off top and bottom from here. But if you look at a set of plans and you draw you see the red lines, the rectangles drawn. This is from a JLC article that covered that was Gary Klein's first exposure of this wet room rectangle. If you see the wet room rectangle and how much space it occupies in the total house, he figured out that if you were under 67%, i.e. your total wet room area was 67% or less of the total area of the home, you had something pretty efficient. In California, he said you could save $2,000 just by doing this. I don't know about that figure. California's kind of an expensive place. Maybe you can save $2,000 with back-to-back plumbing in California. I don't know. But he figured that this was very efficient, and you could get down lower, and you go much higher. He found some builders' plans were 155% of the building. How do you get that much? Well, in California, you put the water heaters out in the garage, right? And so a lot of times the water heater was out way far out in the third stall of this third three-car garage, and it became a really big rectangle. So you want to get all of that area as concentrated as you can. That's the main thing, more than the back-to-back bathrooms. Because we're spoiled, right? We've got all these really easy fixtures, got PEX piping, you can run things all over the place. Lastly, you have to collaborate with your subs. But who are the most important subs? Who are the first guys you call when you want to design and plan and you're going to go? You've heard this in lectures before. Who do you call? Who do you call? It's the first one you call. The architect. Several people said, I didn't want the right answer, so you're not getting one. Who said framer? Very good. Do you use website? No, him. You got the right answer. I didn't want that. I wanted his answer, the wrong answer. You use my site? Good. Very good. My beautiful assistant will hand you a book. So, the thing is, everybody calls in the framer and the lumberyard. We got to talk to them first. The framer don't know SH*T. Okay? You want the expensive guys with a mind. And those are the plumbers, the electricians, and the HVAC people. Those guys, not only do they command the highest wages, they've had to pass exams, they know how to read and write, and a lot of times they know how to calculate things and all. And they will really give you very good input on how to make your homes much more efficient, more than the plumber, more than the lumberyard. They can come, more than the framer or the lumberyard. They can come land. So I recommend you get these guys into the picture right away. The land strategies, very quickly now. Right now, we are in a tremendous, there's like an effervescence of rezoning and states doing what they call preemptive. They take over local zoning so they can change it when the local authorities refuse to. Right now, I think there's currently like 20 odd bills that are going through all different state houses and such to do things like allow additional dwelling units, accessory dwelling units, granny flats and that sort of thing, to reduce the size of lots to a very minimum size, to eliminate single-family zoning entirely. So if you want to do a small apartment building on a single-family lot, you can. To allow multiple single families on a single-family lot. So if you want to do 6 homes on this lot, you can. This is going on in state after state, in city after city. Houston, where I am, they just passed the ruling about the 6 homes on a single lot. You can put a commercial ADU on the front of your property, have a store there. I mean, all over the place things are happening. You're shaking your head. Is disbelief for you? What?
Shocked.
Shocked. No. Good. Here, you use my own side? So, anyhow, so there's a lot of things you do. I'll give you a couple of examples. This is in Atlanta. See, they got the new rules in Atlanta. And so in Atlanta, now you can do this. This is a fellow by the name of Eric Kronberg, and he's an architect and a developer in Atlanta. So he bought a handful of lots, kind of reconfigured them in odd shapes, as you can see. And you see, and one he has, this is a rental project for him. He owns and rents these up. He's got a duplex, a guest house, and an ADU over a garage. So he's got how many? 4 units on a single-family lot. 4 units. Now, you could have a single-family house and an ADU, or a single-family house and a guest house and an ADU. You could do different combinations. In my neck of the woods, you could do 6 if you have room. A lot of places have eliminated the parking requirements, like in Atlanta. So you'll notice he doesn't have a lot of parking. He doesn't waste space on parking, right? I think he's near transit, so this is part of his equation. They're quite pretty. This is very successful. It's complete, and that's kind of the courtyard effect. Instead of having backyards for every house, he has kind of a backyard that all the homes share together. And this is another thing that's pretty common now, sort of common shared amenities like backyards. So it's a very nice project, quite doable. This is in Denver. It's called the T-Light series. Now, you'll notice that the houses have very small or non-existent front yards, and they have no backyards. They have a garage in the back with an alley. This alley and this configuration of the sidewalk in the alley runs perpendicular to the street. It does not run parallel to the street. Alleys are expensive if they run parallel to the street because you're building 2 streets. But if you run your homes perpendicular to the main road, and you calculate how much concrete you spent in that alley, and that's 8 homes, there's 4 on each side. And I did. I went there, I measured how much concrete they used, and then I calculated what it would cost to run 8 25-foot driveways, which is the minimum front yard setback, with their own curb cuts and everything else. And it was like a ton of money different. I meant to look it up, because it's actually in my book, what that ton of money was, but I forgot to. I apologize. So I don't have a figure for you. But please take my word. It was a lot less expensive to build this alley than it would have been to build 8 individual driveways. So there's some efficiency here. Now, this is going to surprise you. You see the front yard right there? Very small front yard. 5-foot setbacks, standard 5-foot setbacks. No front yard, no backyard really to speak of. Some of them do have a balcony, big deal, nobody uses a balcony. But what do they do? How did they solve this? It's my good friend Corkett came up with this. What they do is they give a use easement to the neighbor. So the house on the right gives a use easement to the house on the left. I'm sorry, the house on the left gives a use easement to the house on the right, so that the house on the right can extend past the property line and have a full 10-foot area to put a deck, barbecue, whatever they want to do. Then, of course, the house on the left does the same thing for its left down the line, so that everybody's got kind of this 10-foot side yard that's somewhat useful. Now, is this a great, fantastic yard? Is this the American dream of a backyard? No. But to get these houses down to $600,000 in Denver, this is what they did. And people loved them and bought them. Now, I feel stupid talking about affordable housing and mentioning numbers like 600,000, but that's where we're at. And these are people that couldn't have bought it for 800,000, but maybe for 6 they could, and they did. Sold out. So I got a challenge for you. Besides buying my book and read it, I also want you to buy this book and read it. What is this book? Who said IRC? You said IRC. Vinyl siding or no? Do you use vinyl siding? No. A lot. Here you go. Again, my beautiful assistant will give you a book. So you will notice I'm covering the date on the book, right? It's the last time I bought this book. Now I can access that online. I would have bought the real book to bring it to you, so I would have to cover the date like I am, except it's so big and heavy that I would have to get an extra carry-on baggage just to lug it here. It's really expanded. But I want you to do the following. I want you to read chapter 3. Chapter 3 is the design chapter. I want you to go through chapter 3 and just, on a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper on your kitchen table, design a code minimum house. Do not put anything in that house that chapter 3 does not require. You will notice it doesn't require closets. You will notice it doesn't require a garage. You will notice it doesn't require a ceiling light in the bedroom. You will notice it doesn't require a lot of things. I'm not saying build this house that you're going to design. I'm just saying design it as an exercise. A purging. You know, we used to take a purge in the spring to clean it up. Just purging you of all the concepts you have of what a house is required to have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now to the grand finale. This is my friend and hero of the last 200 years. Is that what we're going on? a long time. He's helped me design so many homes and overcome so many building officials. And the podium is yours.
Thank you.